The sun was setting over the rolling hills of Enugu, casting a golden glow over the village of Umuaga, where the air buzzed with excitement. Tonight was no ordinary night. It was the 7th day after the birth of Chinedu Okeke's first son, a moment every family in the village had been waiting for since the child's cries had pierced the rainy night. 7 years ago, under a mango tree during a torrential downpour, Chinedu had come into the world, his tiny hands sparking with embers even as the midwife wrapped him in a faded Ankara cloth. His mother, Neka, had laughed through her tears, calling it a sign of ancestral favor. "This one a blessing," she'd exclaimed, and the elders had nodded sagely, muttering about the fire gods of old. Now, 7 years later, the naming ceremony for Chinedu's little brother was doubling as a celebration of Chinedu's own gifts. The compound was alive with activity. Women in colorful wrappers danced to the rhythm of talking drums, their voices rising in ululation as they swayed. Men roasted suya over open fires, the scent of charred meat and groundnut spice mingling with the earthy aroma of palm wine. Children ran between legs, clutching sticks of roasted corn, giggling as they dared each other to touch the edge of Chinedu's small flames. The boy himself sat near the center of the compound, dressed in a red agbada his father had sewn just for today, a shy grin on his face as he flicked tiny embers between his fingers. Each spark drew gasps and cheers from the crowd. Elders in beaded caps clapped, young girls whispered about how he'd grow up to be a great man, and his father, Okeke, beamed with pride, pouring palm wine for the village chief. "Ooh, Chinedu, come show the people your gift again," Okeke called, his voice thick with joy. The boy shuffled forward, his small hands trembling slightly as he summoned a flame no bigger than a candle's flicker. He held it up, and the crowd erupted. Women ululating, men shouting Eze Chukwu, as if he were a king blessed by the Almighty. The Neka adjusted her gel, her eyes glistening as she watched her son. She remembered how the rains had parted just as Chinedu's first spark appeared all those years ago, as if nature itself had bowed to his arrival. "This one, go save Nigeria one day," she whispered to her sister, who nodded, slicing yam for the evening's feast. Not far from the fire-lit compound under the shade of a sprawling mango tree, the village griot strummed his kora, singing tales of ancient Igbo warriors who wielded fire against invaders. The children gathered around, wide-eyed, as he wove Chinedu's birth into the story. A boy of flames born in the storm, destined to light the way. Chinedu blushed, hiding his face in his mother's wrapper, but the griot's words planted a seed in his young heart. Maybe he really was meant for something big. Meanwhile, in another part of Enugu, the dusty streets of Obiagu buzzed with a different kind of energy. Amaka Eze was a whirlwind of laughter and chaos, her bare feet slapping against the red earth as she raced through the market, her yellow dress a blur to the traders shouting after her. "Amaka, slow down before you scatter my tomatoes," screamed Mama Ngozi, clutching her apron as a basket teetered on the edge of her stall. But Amaka only laughed, her plaits bouncing as she dodged a pile of okra and leapt over a sleeping dog in one fluid motion. She was fast, faster than any child in Obiagu, faster than the Okadas weaving through traffic on the Lagos-Enugu Expressway. Some said she could outrun a cheetah if it dared cross her path. Her speed wasn't just a quirk, it was a gift, one she'd had since she could toddle. At 3 years old, she'd zipped across her father's compound to snatch a mango from her brother's hand before he'd even blinked. By 6, she was winning races against boys twice her age, leaving them panting in the dust as she taunted, "Una too slow a beg." Her grandmother, Mama Ada, called it a blessing from Ekwensu, the trickster spirit, though she always added a prayer to ward off mischief. Today, Amaka was racing goats in a field behind the market, her laughter echoing as the animals bleated in frustration, unable to keep up with her blurring figure. "Amaka, come help me pound yam," Mama Ada called from the compound, her voice cutting through the noise. Amaka skidded to a stop, dust kicking up around her, and grinned. "Make I finish this race first, nah?" "Ah," she shouted back, then took off again, leaving a trail of giggles in her wake. Mama Ada shook her head, smiling as she pounded yam in a mortar, the rhythmic thud-thud blending with the market's cacophony. Hawkers shouting, radios blaring Afrobeat, and the distant hum of a generator. Amaka's speed wasn't just a party trick. It made her the pride of Obiagu. Traders boasted about her to travelers, claiming she'd one day run for Nigeria in the Olympics, maybe even outpace Usain Bolt himself. Far away in the bustling chaos of Oshodi Lagos, 13-year-old Emeka Nwosu was a different kind of spectacle. Not one of celebration, but of stubborn grit. The sun beat down on the dusty courtyard behind his family's one-room apartment, where Emeka lifted cement blocks with trembling arms, sweat dripping into his eyes. His faded singlet clung to his skinny frame, and his bare feet shuffled on the cracked earth as he grunted with each rep. A group of neighborhood boys sat on a rusted bench nearby, sipping Fanta and laughing. "Emeka, you no get power or why you dey stress?" one of them jeered, tossing a bottle cap at him. Emeka ignored them, his jaws set as he dropped the block and moved to a pile of discarded tires, dragging one across the yard to use as a makeshift weight. He wasn't born with gifts like Chinedu or Amaka. No flames, no speed, just a body that ached after every training session and a heart that refused to quit. His father, a welder who spent his days hunched over iron scraps, had told him early on, "You no need juju to be strong, my son. Hard work fit carry you far past talent." Emeka took it to heart. Every morning before school, he'd run laps around the market, dodging okadas and hawkers, and every evening he'd lift whatever he could find. Blocks, buckets, even his little sister when she wasn't squirming. His mother, a petty trader selling akara by the roadside, would cheer him on as she flipped the golden fritters in hot oil, shouting, "My boy go be like Samson one day." Today, as the sun dipped low, Emeka's sister, Chioma, fetched water from a nearby borehole, her plastic bucket sloshing as she waddled back. "Brother Emeka, you go tire yourself, oh," she warned, setting the bucket down to clap for him. Emeka grinned, wiping sweat from his brow with a dusty hand. "If I tire, who go carry you when you fall?" he teased, ruffling her hair. Chioma giggled, then pointed to a faded Arsenal jersey hanging on the clothesline. "Papa say you go wear am when you become big man." Emeka's smile widened. He didn't have powers, but he had dreams, and he'd lift the whole of Oshodi on his shoulders to make them come true. In the ancient city of Kano, under the shade of a neem tree in a sprawling compound, Fatima Abdullahi sat cross-legged on a woven mat, her notebook balanced on her lap. At 14, she was the brightest star in her family, not because of any supernatural gift, but because her mind worked like a computer, solving problems faster than her teachers could write them on the chalkboard. Today, she was scribbling equations in the fading light, her hijab fluttering softly in the evening breeze as her younger brother, Musa, flew a kite in the courtyard. "Fatima, come play na," Musa called, his voice high with excitement. Fatima looked up, her glasses slipping down her nose, and smiled. "Make I finish this sum first," she replied, her pencil dancing across the page. Iming, her father, a tailor who stitched kaftans for the local imam, had always said she was blessed with the wisdom of Malam's books, even if she couldn't summon fire or run like the wind. "Your brain na your power," he'd told her, tapping her forehead with a calloused finger. Fatima took it seriously. She'd read every textbook in her school's tiny library, mastered algebra before her peers could spell it, and taught herself Hausa proverbs to argue with the boys who teased her for being too smart. Her mother, a groundnut seller in the Sabon Gari market, would bring home scraps of paper for Fatima to practice on, beaming when her daughter solved puzzles that stumped even the local malam. As the muezzin's call echoed from a nearby mosque, Fatima closed her notebook and joined Musa in the courtyard, her laughter mingling with the rustle of neem leaves. She wasn't fast, she wasn't fiery, but her mind burned brighter than any flame. And deep down, she knew it would carry her farther than any power ever could. In a cramped room off a noisy Lagos street, Segun Adebayo sat on a mat, staring at the cracked wall as his father's voice filled the air like a thunderstorm. You no fit be like those super children, but you go do better than dem somehow. Baba Adebayo barked, his faded shirt unbuttoned to reveal a sweat-streaked chest. Segun nodded silently, his fist clenched in his lap, but inside, his heart churned with resentment. He'd grown up hearing about kids like Chinedu and Amaka, born with powers, celebrated like gods while he scrapped for every bit of respect. No flame sparked from his fingers, no speed carried him through races. He was just Segun, the boy who kicked tin cans down the street and dreamed of being more. Outside, the sounds of Lagos pulsed. Okadas honking, a radio blaring Fuji music from a barber shop, and hawkers shouting prices for roasted plantain. Segun's mother stood by the roadside, flipping boli over a small fire, her wrapper tied tightly as she called out customers. Segun watched her through the window, his stomach twisting. She worked too hard for a son who couldn't make her proud. Not yet, anyway. Across the street, a group of boys juggled a football, their laughter mocking him as he sat in the shadows of his father's disappointment. He kicked a pebble across the room, muttering to himself, I go show everybody one day. As the moon rose over Nigeria, 5 letters were being delivered across the country, each sealed with the crest of Super Naija Academy in Abuja. In Umuaga, Chinedu's father opened the envelope with trembling hands, reading aloud to the family. Your son has been selected. Emeka clutched her wrapper, tears of pride in her eyes. In Obiagu, Amaka's grandmother ululated as the letter arrived, shouting, My girl go shine for Abuja. In Oshodi, Emeka's mother hugged him tightly as he read his summons, whispering, You go make us proud, my son. In Kano, Fatima's father smiled softly as she traced the words with her finger, Super Naija Academy, her heart racing with possibility. And in Lagos, Segun tore open his letter with a scowl, his father muttering, Go show dem say you fit compete. The buses rolled out at dawn, rickety vehicles painted with slogans like God Day and No Condition Permanent. Chinedu boarded in Enugu, clutching a small bag with roasted yam from his mother, his flames flickering nervously in his palm. Amaka hopped onto hers with a grin, sneakers tied tight, ready to outrun anyone who crossed her path. Emeka stood at the Oshodi Park, his family waving as he climbed aboard, a cement block's weight on his shoulders turning to determination. Fatima adjusted her hijab in Kano, her notebook tucked under her arm, whispering a prayer as the bus honked. Segun slouched into his seat in Lagos, staring out the window with a storm in his chest, muttering, I know go fail. The journey to Abuja was long. Bumpy roads, roadside hawkers, and the occasional checkpoint where soldiers demanded small thing. But as the buses converged on the capital, each child carried their own dreams, fears, and secrets. Super Naija Academy awaited, a crucible that would forge heroes or break them entirely.